Hello, everybody. This is going to be a quick video on filter. It is a higher order function and a very useful one. And so really quickly, higher order functions are just functions which take other functions as either parameters or return other functions. And so we're going to talk about filter, which is a function that takes another function as a parameter, specifically a predicate. If you were to have the higher order function Hall of Fame, the first ballot inductees would definitely be map, filter, and fold. They would all make it in there. And as you probably figured out from the title of this video, we're going to talk about filter. This is also known as select, but sometimes fold is known as reduce. Map is usually always known as map. Okay, so so that you can learn a lot about filter just from its types, from its method signature here. It's got a generic type. Well, it's going to be called E for the purposes of this method signature. And it's going to take a predicate, which takes an E, and a list, which takes an E, and it's going to return some other list, the filtered contents of this list. And so those who are not familiar with a predicate is just something that returns a Boolean. It's something that evaluates to a Boolean. In this case, sort of the standard Java predicate interface that they've made has a test method that takes some T. And so what you're going to do with filter here, somebody's going to pass in a big list of values of some type. I'm also going to pass in a predicate that takes that same type, and it's going to call the test method on each of those items, and whatever passes the test, aka returns true, it'll include in the return value that will have all of everything from this list that passes this test will be in the return value. So just as a quick example, imagine that you wanted to pass in a list of integers and we're going to pass a predicate that says the test whether or not some integer is even. We're going to pass some list of integers, say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in. Filter will run through each of these items and call the test method on the predicate for each one to see if they pass. So 1 is going to fail, 2 is going to pass the even test, 3 is going to fail, 4 is going to pass the even test, and 5 is going to fail the even test, which would produce the list 2 and 4. We could choose it for a different type, this time passing in a test predicate whose test method, takes a string and sees if, that string contains A, E, I, O, and U, like all 5 vowels. And then I pass in that predicate with this list, which has parallel, equation, concurrent, and tenacious, right? Parallel will be passed the test method, it'll fail. Equation will be passed the test method, it'll pass, so it passes through. A concurrent will fail, and tenacious will pass, so we end up with just equation and tenacious. And so let's just dig into a quick example where we can sort of see these in action, right? So I want you to imagine that you graduated and you're trying to figure out where where you want to go and find a job, right? And so there might be, this is a list of sort of all the rent areas that I could find, like sort of average, sort of median bedroom rent and the population and also the sort of area, the metro area. And so first you could be like, well, I want to live in Massachusetts. So let me just type comma MA. Now my call to filter with all of these rent information, right? Like if I come back here, like this is the complete list of rent infos that I've got, like all of them. If I type in comma MA, right? Now I'm going to be saying, all right, well, only give me the ones whose area includes comma MA in it. So I get like sort of filtered to Massachusetts. I could be like, well, let's try Missouri. Right now I get all the Missouri areas. I could also be like, I want San because I want to live in a place that's got San in the title or something, right? I could combine that together, or I could, let's say we want to check Massachusetts places, or let's check Missouri, right? And then I could say, well, I don't want to live in some place that's too expensive. I could start to crank down the rent and you sort of see like, at what point do I like limit it down a little bit too much, right? Let's say I then want to say like, oh, I want to live in a big place. Well, like now my rent's too low. When we crank it up to the top, that's the only place that's that big, sort of Kansas City, Missouri, you can sort of see things adding in. Let's say I want at least 100,000 people, but I don't want to, I want to live in a place that's sort of expensive. Like, oh, look, Kansas City's ahead of St. Louis on its average thing. So we take this out so we can see a little bit more, right? And sort of imagine saying, oh, I want to live in a really expensive place. Like, look, we've got it down to these things, but I want to live in a very big place that has a rent at least that high. So you can sort of get everybody back down and sort of use this to sort of explore things. The key is that the predicate that I'm sending in here is sort of, I'm controlling it by changing these values. And you can see that you can use filter in a lot of different ways. We've used it for that tool. We used it for just a list of strings. We listed list of integers. It's nice when you build a function that it can be useful, and sort of the ability to make this higher order function that takes another function, this predicate, makes it a very useful and valuable tool. And hopefully this video will help you in completing this exercise.